My family was slain when my Q-dad lost it. An unusual and unnerving Reddit post that appeared on September 11, 2022, has this morning's headline. In the essay, a woman talked about how, after falling down an internet rabbit hole, her father lost control and attacked her entire family. You would undoubtedly be skeptical after reading an article like this, but unfortunately, it was a serious issue. Every now and then, a first-hand account of an incredibly horrific crime appears on Reddit. In the past few years, a few have been rather widely circulated. There have also been a lot of fakes. This isn't the case here. I should disclose that this narrative involves politics. Regretfully, it's unavoidable because it serves as a sort of focal point. I really hate becoming political on this channel, so I'm just going to tell you what occurred and explain it as a narrative with no thoughts other than the folks I mentioned in the story. Now let's get started. My Q-dad slaughtered my family this morning because he lost his rage. Yes, the web decimated him. The 53-year-old protagonist of today's story lives in Walled Lake, a little hamlet about 30 miles northwest of Detroit. Igor Lannis is his name. Igor had never been subject to anything resembling a protection order and had no history of violence. All accounts pointed to him being a typical father. Better still, he was a respectable dad. He was the husband of 56-year-old Tina Lannis, with whom he had two daughters, Rebecca, 21, and Rachel, 25. When Rebecca mentioned her parents, she said, "My parents were really loving and happy people growing up. I have always had a special bond with both of my parents." Igor Lannis works as an automotive part designer in Detroit at the moment. He was a conservative, as were most men in his community and at work, though he was never really at the extreme end of the spectrum. He watched Fox News and was somewhat of a Trump fan, but that was all he did for the time being. His daughter, Rebecca, said he was more normal in 2016. He liked Trump, but he wasn't crazy. But then 2020 happened. Then Igor's entire world fell apart following Joe Biden's election victory, and subsequently his entire family as well. When Donald Trump claimed that the election had been rigged, Igor wholeheartedly agreed. This led him to the internet, where he started to view a growing number of videos posted by people who shared his interests. Before long, he was in serious danger. Right now, on YouTube, the name of the group Igor joined seems to be very taboo. You can pronounce the word Q by itself. Anon is a pronounceable word on its own. Combining the two, nevertheless, will probably result in a report being made against you. Igor jumped headfirst into the Anon rabbit hole, devouring everything by watching an increasing number of videos, reading an increasing number of comment sections, and joining group after group. In light of this, I'll just say this, Anon, you're not foolish, you understand what I mean when I say this. Soon after, he began to think that, quote, a global cabal targeting conservatives exists and that the deep state stole the election. Anon initially surfaced in late 2017. At this point, a user on 4chan who went by the moniker Q Clearance Patriot started posting anonymously, claiming to be a high-ranking government employee and an insider with knowledge of the deep state. The Q stemmed from what he called his Q-level clearance when it came to this intelligence. He said that Donald Trump will seize the storm and fire dishonest public servants, among many other things. He claimed that Hillary Clinton was being held and would soon be placed under arrest. Those who were already in too deep lingered behind, even as an increasing number of predictions came and went without anything substantial happening. This led to several nationally aired incidents. Then there was the Pizzagate incident. After that, there were pastors of churches preaching to their flocks. There was the homosexual frogman who claimed to be in communication with Q and was involved in a number of naughty actions, and ultimately, there was the incident that occurred in the Capitol. Sadly, there were also a lot of homicides that occurred. In 2021, a father in California claimed to have become enlightened by the organization, which led to his becoming obsessed with the movement and killing both his 10-month-old daughter and 2-year-old son. He said that because his wife carried snake DNA and passed it on to the kids, he was forced to abort them. This guy has also gone way too deep down the Anon rabbit hole. According to the police, he said the kids would become monsters and that he had to murder them. And in 2020, a Florida lady killed another Anon follower because she believed the other person was secretly preparing a government plan against her. By 2020, Igor might only discuss these conspiracies. Really, all he could think of was them. His daughter, Rebecca, said that he read ludicrous theories about vaccinations and Trump on the internet, taking up all of his time. He made every effort to push them on the rest of his family, much to their dismay. Not only did he push this on his immediate family, but he also sent video after video to his father-in-law, begging him to watch them in the hopes that he would support the cause. Rebecca remarked, nobody could talk him out of them. Rebecca asserted that, although her father had never used physical force previously, his behavior definitely deteriorated around the age of 20. His family said that he was undergoing therapy for mental health issues, but they did not elaborate much on the nature of those issues. The police, in fact, dispute that entirely, saying that no records of any form of therapy exist. It all comes down to your personal views in the end. According to Igor Lannis, Trump underwent a metamorphosis following his defeat in 2020. His frequent outbursts of rage toward us only got worse. Nothing material, though. He never used physical force on anyone. Igor ultimately ceased finding Fox News to be sufficiently right-leaning. Biden was incensed and accused them of betraying him after they announced that he was winning the race in Arizona. He obediently carried out Trump's instructions to prevent his supporters from viewing the station. He had only ever seen Fox News until beginning to watch OAN and Newsmax. He thought Fox News was being unduly merciful or dishonest. Igor started to find it impossible to add anything to any conversation that did not, in some way, involve his newfound convictions. They eventually occupied all of his mental capacity. He started getting more and more agitated over things that ordinary people would find unimportant. If you mentioned cell phones, he would start talking about conspiracies involving 5G towers. He would frequently bring up immunizations whenever he talked about becoming sick. If he talked about technology, you would get a lecture on the dangers of electromagnetic fields. I think you get it. We were religious people. Rebecca said. My sister, Mom, and I would always pray together. My dad had been turned off to our religion by Q. When religion departed his life, his online life took its place. Radicalization on the internet. And so on. Right-wing extremism, she said. Rebecca started to see red flags. At the very least, she was starting to feel uneasy around her father. She asserted, I gradually started pulling away from him because I kept seeing warning signs from him. Regretfully, my mother and sister were too devoted to acknowledge that he was capable of exhibiting such extreme behavior. She started posting, blogging, and talking about his behavior on the internet. He would read on his laptop and phone all day and night, getting incredibly irritated about the littlest things. His easygoing, enjoyable demeanor vanished. He began discussing 5G, the dangers of electromagnetic fields, and the fraud that is contemporary medicine. One evening, Rebecca went to a friend's house for a birthday celebration and stayed the night. She was unaware that her life at home would drastically change. It was quite early in the morning, somewhere before 4. Igor was having arguments with both his wife Tina and daughter Rachel. The temperature increased significantly above average. Though the particular subject of their disagreement is still unknown, it is believed to have been his wife and daughter growing weary of his convictions because, unlike their earlier arguments, Tina and Rachel were prepared to get in the car and leave at 3 in the morning. Tina and Rachel reached for the front door, stepped out onto the porch, and headed for the car. That was the moment Igor snapped. With his shotgun drawn, he opened fire on their rear. According to Rebecca, they were both going to go. My mom was at home grabbing something before they departed. As my sister was waiting on the porch, my dad shot her. Then he also shot my mother. A shaken woman reported that she had been shot by her father, Igor Lannis, to the police around 4 in the morning. Then local officers rushed to the scene. At first, they had discovered the call at a neighbor's house. They heard another gunshot coming from the scene itself and hurried over. This is when Igor came out the front door, pulled up his Remington 870 shotgun, aimed it toward the police, and fired. He missed, hitting a car behind one of the cops and then a house behind the other officer. In retaliation, the Walled Lake police officer and the Oakland County sheriff pulled out their own guns and shot him, killing him right away. Igor appeared to have intended to inflict significantly more harm, albeit he was fortunate not to strike any of the police. It didn't seem like he was going to stop there. He had his car keys in his hands when the police arrived, so it seemed like he was going towards the car. Maybe he was just going to bolt. Maybe he was planning to go on to somewhere else. Actually, we're not sure. The officers then watched Rachel Lannis as she made her most valiant attempt to crawl out the front door. Subsequently, they helped her escape and brought her to the hospital, where she was taken seriously unwell and gravely harmed. She told them that her mother had been killed by her father's bullet a short while ago. They found Tina Lannis deceased inside the house. She had been shot multiple times in the rear, so they noticed that she appeared to have been shot while attempting to flee. In addition, he had repeatedly wounded the family dog before shooting and killing her. Rachel had to crawl to safety after being shot numerous times in the legs and back while attempting to escape. Igor had another daughter, Rebecca Lannis, who was not at home at the time, the investigators later found out. They discovered she was staying at her friend's house following a birthday celebration. She came to the conclusion that it was just terrible luck that I was staying the night at a friend's house, and I might not have survived. Rebecca first found out about this when her grandmother called her that morning to ask if she was also in the hospital. She knew almost nothing about the topic. At that point, her grandmother filled her in on everything that had happened that morning, including the news that her father had lost his cool and shot her mother, sister, and dog. Her sister was the only one who had survived. Rebecca then moved in with her grandparents for a while. She was limited to taking everything in. She thought that this tragedy should act as a wake-up call for people to be mindful of friends and family who might be going through similar things and could use some support. Bearing that thought in mind, she headed over to Reddit and joined a community for those who had similarly lost loved ones to the Anon lifestyle. The soon-to-be viral story was then posted on social media by her. Yep, the internet ruined him. Growing up, my parents were extremely loving and happy people. I always had a special bond with both my parents. My dad started sliding down the Q rabbit hole in 2020 after Trump's loss. He persisted in reading conspiracies concerning Trump, vaccines, the rigged election, etc. He'd always claimed to want our well-being and safety. He often lost his temper with us, and it just became worse. Nothing tangible, though. He was never violent with anyone. He got into a fight with my mother around 4 a.m. on September 11th, after which he pulled out pistols and shot my sister, my dog, and her. My sister is currently in the hospital, and my mother passed away from her wounds. When my dad retaliated against the police, they killed him. I'm in disbelief and at a loss for words. I hope the FBI tightens its grip on you and that your lackeys rot in prison and hell for poisoning so many people. At first, people doubted the post's authenticity. Comprehending the tragedy of it all, this is an inconceivable story, is understandable. Nonetheless, news articles were easily found, proving the post's veracity. A moderator then pinned a post with the comment, "We can confirm this is authentic. OP, I'm sorry for what happened to you. Every single one of us is. Kindly inform us if there is anything we can accomplish." Reactions poured in, most of them in a kind of a massive outpouring of support for Rebecca. Many of the people who responded were former Anon members themselves, such as the user somewhere, who posed the question, "Do you have support?" among others. Are you currently in a relationship? I really apologize. Here I am, too. Rebecca said, "My grandparents are with me. We still have a hard time believing what happened, to be honest." Another user, Agnes Perdita, wrote, "I sincerely hope your sister makes it through. Other than saying I'm really, really sorry, I don't know what else to say. I hope you receive the help you require." Rebecca expressed her concern by saying, "She's in stable condition, but there's a possibility she won't be able to move her legs again." Possum Hicks, a user, then commented, "I'm so sorry this happened. I believe in you. I've read papers about this topic. The media outlets blame mental health issues for your dad's predicament. While you process this horrific loss, I'm hoping you'll make the correction regarding the Q influence. I'm sorry, and I really hope you're not by yourself." Anon Took a Life, existing position 5742, made a contribution. They declared him to be mentally ill. He was just your typical next-door neighbor, a well-functioning individual, until he became engaged to Anon. It is a cult. After being brainwashed, he passed away, believing he would be reborn. It was Anon who took his life. Though she could not respond to them all at once, Rebecca read and valued each response. She responded to each one at the time with a broad reply. "I am sincerely grateful to each and every one of you, and I am reading every single comment." Though she appreciated the sympathy, her main goal was to raise awareness about the dangerous digital rabbit hole her father had fallen into. "I want the media to call out Q because they are completely to blame for this," she went on. She was not pleased that the media had openly criticized Anon for its support of criminals in other cases similar to this one. Many others, like her father, had been ordinary people who were perfectly decent before they were persuaded. "It feels like a demon has possessed him," she remarked. The police kept investigating the cause of the incident in the interim. Since they could not trust Rebecca's statement alone, they took his phone and devices and started their own investigation. They were astounded that someone with no prior criminal record could carry out such a heinous act without first engaging in any violent crimes, no matter how small. Actually, in the whole history of the Walled Lake Police Department, this was the first shot involving an officer. It was really big. It goes without saying that it was something they had never seen before. What had happened also horrified the neighbors. Igor never came across as malicious, even though they knew he was a solitary man. If that makes any sense, he seemed a touch silent and strange, but not enough to raise any red flags. "I saw him take the dog for a couple walks," a neighbor informed news outlets. "I said hi to him a few days earlier while I was doing yard maintenance." Without saying anything, the man simply hung his head. Rebecca went on to share the news, saying, "It's hard to believe my mother is no longer with us. We were really close to one another. I think radicalization needs to be given more attention. If they have family members who own guns and act in this manner, you should seek help for them and get them checked into a mental health facility, even if you don't think they are dangerous." Rachel's health gradually improved from critical to stable after undergoing emergency surgery. Even though Rebecca can surmise what her family argued about that morning, she won't just ask her sister. "I just want to be in the dark." In her words, "I really don't want to know." According to Anon's researcher, Jack Braditch, an associate professor of journalism and media studies at the School of Communication and Information at Rutgers University, the organization may be especially alluring to people who struggle to let go of their beliefs in a world that is constantly changing. He continued, "Anon provided some people with a narrative that virtually guaranteed a particular kind of future and a sense of purpose. This planned, predictable, and certain future may provide some peace of mind to those who are anxious about the future, in the same way that religion helps a huge number of people." He said they could act like they were defending a bunker and treat everyone, even family members, as enemies.